Okay, let's turn over to Revelation chapter 2. We're going to look at verses number 18 to 26 because that is the definition of the age, the Thyatira age of the church. Okay, so Revelation chapter 2, verse 18. And by the way, that's in your books on page 139 also. Okay, it says, And unto the angel of the church in Thyatira write, These things saith the Son of God, who hath his eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like fine brass. I know thy works, and charity, and service, and faith, and thy patience, and thy works, and the last to be more than the first. Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication and to eat things sacrificed unto idols. And I gave her space to repent of her fornication, and she repented not. Behold, I will cast her into a bed, and them that commit adultery with her into great tribulation, except they repent of their deeds. And I will kill her children with death, and all the churches shall know that I am he which searcheth the reins and hearts, and I will give unto you, unto every one of you, according to your works. But unto you I say, and unto the rest in Thyatira, as many as have not this doctrine, and have not known the depths of Satan, as they speak, I will put upon you none other burden, but that which you have already that which you have already, hold fast till I come. And he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. Okay, so we're entering into a new age. We want to remember, let me get my laser pointer up here. Okay, we remember that we looked at the Ephesus age, where the age is characterized by the problems that the church of Ephesus had in the Revelation. Now, I'm saying that very carefully. Okay, it's all very well outlined and very strict in the outline. Uh, we want to remember that over in the book of the Revelation, there were the seven churches of Asia. And as I've repeated in my review each time, each church represents an age of the church. So there were seven real churches, and for that time period, they had specific problems. But because the book of the Revelation is a prophetic book, these churches that existed in Asia represent the ages to come. And so you had the Ephesian age, and we want to remember that they were the church that lost their first love. And that means that they encountered heresy right away. It set in. It didn't wait for thousands of years for things to go bad. People are fickle. People are funny. People are stupid. No, I shouldn't say that. So anyhow, but I think I got enough of that word out. Anyhow, that's the truth. And so they got into heresy very quickly, bad heresy. Then we got down to the fact that as the church was growing, it came under persecution from the years 100 to 300. So 100, why we say 100 is because that marks the end of the writing of the New Testament, the writing of the Bible. That marks the end of the apostles. John was the last apostle to die about that time period. And so we enter into a new age where now the church has spread around Europe, and the Roman government is upset at this. And the Roman government, they didn't mind if you had other religions, as long as you didn't claim exclusivity. As long as they were sort of on par with each other, they would allow the religions to exist. But the church said, no, no other religions are valid. Only the church is valid. And so this was caused in the Roman Empire to bring persecution on the church. And so just as the church of Smyrna suffered, so did the churches of the Smyrna age then suffer. So they came out of that time period around 300 AD, just really just a little bit after, with the rise of Constantine. You should always remember Constantine. Remember, I'll tell you, yeah, this council you can forget the name, and the other name you can forget. Some names are worth remembering a little bit. Pretty much, if I remembered them, it's pretty good for you to remember also. The reason why I remember them is because I refer to them frequently enough when I'm preaching and I'm talking about critical time periods. So Constantine rises. He claims that he's seen a vision. He ends the persecution, and about the same time, this set the pace for um, this set the pace for uh, set for the church to become the official church of the Roman Empire. So that happened about 300 AD, lasted till about 450. Why does it last till 450? That's because that's about the time period when the Roman Empire ended. They got attacked, and the Roman seat of Roman government was disbanded, and so now you had different kingdoms of the Roman Empire that were rising up, and they were fighting for power. During this time, this is when you had the compromised church. When the church is now, they've gone through the suffering, they've got freedom. So what do? They blend with the Roman government, compromise. Now you've got the seat of Satan that has, and there it is on the screen there with the church, with the seat of Satan. The seat of Satan, the Pontifex Maximus, the Babylonian of the Babylonian mystery religions, it is united to the church at this point through the Roman government. So this is one of the reasons why, as Baptists, we do not like state and church to mix. Now, some people would think, well, why are churches so political? Well, they should be political, okay? They should try to influence politics. What we mean by the separation of church and state is that there is no authoritative power that one has over the other. So back in the time of Pergamus, the church became one with the government, became the state church, and it utilized state powers to then persecute the true churches. And so this is when that took place. The compromise was made. Now the Pontifex Maximus, the high priest, which is the title the Pope has today, it was at this time that term came from the Babylonian mystery religions and applied to the Pope. Okay, so now we just finished up the Pergamus age. We're next entering into about 1,000-year period. If you notice, there's about 70 years for the first age, about 200 years for the second age, about 150 years, okay, all about 200 years or less. But Thyatira, this church age lasts from 450, about the fall of the Roman Empire, to 1500. Why 1500? Because that is when the Reformation is now going to take place, and you're going to enter into a different period of world history. Our church ages fit into the world history ages that are taught in a college class. You go to a college history class, and they would refer to these different ages. And this would be the Middle Ages, according to world history, up until the time of the Reformation. And then that's a critical time period where things change again. So fall of the empire to rise of the Reformation is going to be this area here. And notice it has this area here, mystery religions accommodated. And that's what you see here in the text that I read from the Revelation. Talks about Jezebel. Okay, why Jezebel? Because Jezebel was a key figure in the application of the Babylonian mystery religions to Israel. She was married to, anybody remember? Ahab. Yeah, Ahab. Ahab brought her on where you had the problem of the Philistines' religion influencing them, Jezebel takes it to a new level where it becomes aligned with the mystery religions. Now, this description of Jezebel, if you're a good Bible student, it'll sound like Revelation chapter 17. Okay, to Mystery Babylon, the great whore. And so you see the idea of let's look at verse 20 again, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication. Well, that's what happened in this church age. All of the churches, they're going to be committing spiritual fornication and to eat things sacrificed unto idols. Uh, this would be a key element of the Babylonian mystery religions that's contained in the Mass. In the Mass, you have a teaching that is the transubstantiation into the body and blood of Christ. That was a pagan notion. That was not there in the original churches, turning it into the literal body and blood of Christ. And so when it talks about sacrifice unto idols, the wafer, that round wafer that you would receive in communion if you were Catholic, there's a reason why it's round and it's not a broken up matzah, okay, cracker. And that's because that was representative of the sun god. It's marked with a T, okay? That is not the cross. That's the symbol of Tammuz, who was the son of Semiramis. Semiramis and her son Tammuz were the satanic counterfeit for Mary and Jesus Christ. Satan trying to preempt the communion later on, and to preempt Mary and her virgin-born son. So the transubstantiation, that was all a pagan idea, and it turned the Mass into a blasphemy and idolatry. Okay, and then verse 22, behold, I will cast her into a bed, and them that committed adultery with her into great tribulation. Ding, 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 ding. That's the tribulation. Okay, so this is what's going to happen. In fact, you're gonna have in whatever churches are left after the rapture, they're going to very easily be joined in finally an ecumenical system that will be represented by the mystery Babylon religion. And so people are going to be cast into bed with her, and they're going to see great tribulation, except they repent of their deeds. And then verse 23, I will kill her children with death. Okay, so all the religions that cave in and become part of the Babylonian mystery religions in the tribulation time, those religious offsprings are going to be killed, and all the churches shall know that I am he which searcheth the reins and hearts. Okay, so verse 24, when it says, as many have not this doctrine, which have not known the depths of Satan as they speak, I will put upon you none other burden. So they're going to be burdened up with this accommodation of the Babylonian mystery religions. So Jezebel in Revelation 2 is related to Revelation 17, and the entire church age is going to be characterized by that same spirit. So the spirit of Thyatira, the spirit of Jezebel, the spirit of the great whore in Revelation 17 will characterize the church in the Middle Ages. So you're going to have a rise in power of essentially Catholicism. And we don't want to necessarily even say Catholicism. We would like to identify it more accurately as the Babylonian mystery religions. So, you could have we don't believe in the Catholicism, the universality of the church. That won't take place until the millennium, when we have a universal church with Jesus Christ at the head. We have individual churches now, but there are some that are persuaded that you have the church made up of all the brethren around the world. Well, I guess if you looked at it that way, that's not spiritually bad. It's just doctrinally bad. Okay, but we want to identify specifically that the universality of the Catholic Church, of the Roman Catholic Church, um, is centered around the Babylonian mystery religions. Okay, so it's going to be accommodating again the mystery of religions. That's a key figure. Okay. Well, let me see. Okay, now I need to get some extra work on my PowerPoint slides for this, but we'll see how we can go with this. Okay, um, so if you go down to paragraph 347 on page 139, talks about the date of the age of Thyatira, and along with the fall of the Roman Empire, we want to read that it's marked by the beginning of Leo the Great's papacy. He's Leo the First, as he claims spiritual primacy over all the other sees or seats. I looked up the etymology of that, and it's seats. I don't, why they call it a see. Sounds good, I guess. Okay. Um, and so And so it's at this time, with the fall of the Roman Empire, that you're going to have the Pope, who's the next key figure, the next key figure of prominence. Uh, he is going to uh, he's going to try to take that power. He's going to fall more into that power structure. No more emperor, so rise of the Pope. So the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 gave rise to the opportunity for papal influence and growth in power. So that's going to characterize this next 1,000 years. It's going to be the rise of that papal power. You're going to see it for that next 1,000 years until they finally actually go to do themselves in, because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, the papacy back in that day was not what we think of it today. It sort of grew over time in power. They started using the title Pope, and he was going to now claim power over the other churches, the other sees or other seats, just like you had the Roman seat, where the Roman Pope was. Okay, the other sees: Antioch, Constantinople, Jerusalem, and I think one or more that were there. Maybe Alexandria, and I can't remember any others. Uh, those churches were like mega churches, and they sort of held political power over the churches in their areas. But they had, if you remember, a confederacy of the power of those bishops. They didn't see themselves over each other. This is this is where the Roman Pope is going to claim power over the other bishops. So they saw themselves equal to each other. The Roman Pope says, no, 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 I have the primary power because I have the seat of Peter. And he's going to make that claim. So the firm establishment of papal power dominated the medieval or Middle Ages. The end of the age for 1450, I'm sorry, for 1500, is going to be characterized by the elevation of the papacy to its highest level of power, in which they claim temporal power as well. So the Pope claimed spiritual power over all the other churches in a universal bid. Then by the end of the age, they're going to claim power over the state and say that they're basically an emperor of the state. Now they see in this the two swords that they took up at the Last Supper. Remember, Jesus talked about having sword, and they said, "Here we have two swords." He says, "That's enough." Okay. So the Catholic Church is going to say, ha ha, we have two swords. One is spiritual, the other one is temporal. And so they're going to claim spiritual power in the churches and temporal power over the states. So that's going to be at the beginning and end. That'll mark the thing. Now, when they get this corruption and they take a step too far, it's going to lead the into the feeling for a word, the Crusades. It's going to lead into the Crusades. It's going to lead into battle. Uh, it, this is one of the reasons why a Baptist or Baptist-like churches they would renounce going to war, not so much not because war was so odious, but because it was being commanded by the church, and the church doesn't have war. Okay, we don't discipline people by killing them. Okay, there's a joke in there somewhere, but anyhow, but the Catholic Church would do that. Our job is to try to reconcile people when there's a problem and bring people together and get ourselves back to work. Well, if they don't do that, then you have to dismiss them from church, and now they are subject to the secular power, and the secular power can kill people. Okay, we don't, they do. So stay in the church. Okay. Um, Paragraph 348, then, at the bottom of the page there. The end of the age is associated with the Renaissance, and you can read about that more on page 158, which was setting the stage for the Protestant Reformation. So you're going to have the let me just look over here. Okay. You're going to have the power build up until the Renaissance comes in. As I said on page 158, you'll be able to read more about that in advance. Um, now there were certain things that were pushing for the Reformation, uh, notably the Babylonian captivity of the church. That's going to be if you want to look ahead on page 153 for that. That's going to be about the time when the power of the papacy is broken. At that point, you had popes that were vying for power, one in France, one in Rome, and they were excommunicating each other all the time. So you see this grasp at power is going to do them in. Also, the Renaissance is going to do them in. Uh, in the 1400s, and I've talked about this before, and I'll say it now and again later on. What happened was this grasp at power by the Roman Pope, sending out the Crusades. He's going to send out one of the Crusades, the Fourth Crusade. It's going to be. They're going to go down underfunded towards Jerusalem. Realize they don't have enough money, so they say, well, let's go over to Constantinople and let's get ourselves some funding from them. They go to Constantinople, and the bishop over there says, no, you can't have any money. So they say, oh, yeah? And they attack and sack Constantinople. Well, now Constantinople, the other seat of the Roman government in the East, they're gonna not trust the West Empire anymore. Well, when they don't trust the Western Empire, they end up um, uh, in trouble, because now you've got the Muslims attacking, but they won't appeal to the West for any help. So the Muslims come in and take them over. When that happens, the scholarship of the East flees to the West, bringing with them their Greek scriptures. And now you have this revival of learning. And so the Pope, who thought he was sending out crusades because he doesn't have a very wise temporal power, he ends up creating the very circumstance where there's that will lead to a revival in the West, which will give rise to the Reformation. He will have spited himself. You know how they say you cut your nose to cut off your nose to spite your face. Yeah, he thought he was doing good by going around there, sending out the troops. Well, he didn't have that much power. It ends up causing the Reformation, which they don't like. So you've got these things like the popes vying for each other because they want the power, sending out the crusades, which invites the Reformation and the Renaissance. They don't like. They end up overstepping with using dogma and a certain method of learning, which only led to problems. They had the scholastic method. Don't you think the scholastic method would be kind of nice? Yeah, well, it was that method that caused them to actually have the argument of how many angels sit on the head of a pin. Okay, so they overdid that. People are just ripe for they're just ripe for the Reformation. They're just ripe to get back to studying the Bible. And that will be the mark of the beginning of the next age. Okay, so the key phrase here is they wanted power, they got power, and it was the power of the Antichrist church. Okay, so that's going to be enough for today. Let me ask any questions about the timing of things, the character of the age. Okay. Brother Tone, yes.
I'm just curious. I'm not. I'm not. My question does not refer to the nature of the ages, but because the of the churches mentioned, seven churches mentioned, I think only Ephesus is the one church that was established by Paul.
I don't know.
And
We know Ephesus was. Laodicea is sort of connected there because the letter was encouraged to go over to Laodicea also. What we'll say, but go ahead, your point there.
yeah, and but then I understand that John himself pastored the church in Ephesus.
Yeah, he took over the pastorate there. Yes.
Yeah, and so why would what happened to them? Why would they be guilty of the what do you call this? Losing their first love.
Okay. Well, as John encountered something like the Gnostic heresy, and he dealt with that in First, Second, and Third John, and his gospel was also uh, uh, written against the Gnostics. It's not just written to prove the deity of Christ. It was written also to counter the Gnostics. He was already encountering that, and so the fact that he had to deal with it means that the Gnostic heresies that denied Christ, they evidently were cropping up very powerfully, and so yes, from that time on, even though they had John there, and that's why I said you had the stupidity of the people to come into play also. They brought things like that and other views that they would have to deal with all at the same time, and that's why early on you had the deity of Christ was being defined by about the time you got to 300 AD. So it was very early that those fights were already manifested, and then Paul he recognizes, of course, that let me think, where was it? Okay, over in Colossians, which would be in the same region, they had the same problem, and he was writing to the Gnostic heresy when he wrote the Colossians, the book of Colossians.
And
So regardless of who was there, didn't stop the wolves in sheep clothing.
So for example, the other churches not mentioned, the seven churches are, many of them are different from the churches that are mentioned in the letters of Paul, like Corinth. It doesn't appear there anymore. Romans is the same. That is Roman, the church in Rome, the same Roman church that Paul was writing to.
Paul was writing, yeah, in Romans he was, yes.
So
Now, over in First Peter, when it talks about Babylon, it's not a reference to Rome, it's a reference to Babylon.
Babylon.
So you'll see that, yeah.
So that's the extent of the decadence that the Roman church, the initial Roman church, has gone into, as men, I mean, they have dipped into. So they have digressed so much from the teaching, the doctrines in Romans.
Yeah.
And they become,
Yeah.
so
Well,
I'm
especially
saying what,
because Rome was the seat of the empire,
right,
and so it was, by osmosis, maybe you could say.
and I'm because I'm curious about our heritage as Baptists. You see, we have to have a continuous thread. It's we are, in other words, we are survivors.
Yeah,
No.
no, we do not do a continuous thread. There's a thing out in the world. It's called landmarkism, and it's and also known as Baptist briders. They think that only the Baptists are the bride of Christ over in the Revelation. They think that as landmarkers, they're saying what they'll hold to is that one Baptist church started another Baptist church. So they don't think of papal succession, they think of church succession. And when you go to look at the Baptist writers and landmarkers, wonderful people, by the way, got lots of great studies. They're just wrong on this point. They try to suggest that one has to start another. But when you start looking at some of the churches that they count in that lineage, you wouldn't want to be associated with them. For instance, they would associate us with the Montanists. The Montanists were Pentecostals. Okay, the only thing the Montanists had that was favorable was that they fought the establishment churches, and that was within the first couple of hundred years of the church that happened. And then you had the Donatists, and so they would say we're like the Donatists. The Donatists were purists at the end of around 300, the beginning of I'm sorry, at about the time of 300. The only thing that they really had in common with us was that they fought the universal church. And so in being separatists, they were certainly like Baptists, but they really weren't Baptists. So the problem with that would be, I remember when Brother Edwards and I were talking when he first came over, and we were talking about churches, and he had not been exposed to everything that could be learned at that point, just being fresh out of Bible college. I was explaining, sure, if you were, let's say you got stranded on an island, and it's not a deserted island, it's just not known okay, to everybody else, and you got a bunch of natives there, and you're a sinner lost on your way to hell, but you got a Bible, and you open up the Bible and you read how to get saved. Okay. And you say, oh, I think I'll get saved. Okay. Then you're going to go to the other people and then all the other natives, teach them English and how to read the Bible. They get saved. And what do you do with them? Well, you're told to baptize them. Okay. And you form a church. Did you have a tie into the lineage of Baptist churches? No. That's why I specified you're lost when you get there and you get saved when you get there. What you do, what is more typical for Baptists is to say, this is what we're founded on, not a line of churches, as if that there's some credence to that because the Catholic Church has a line of popes. No, we're not. We don't follow a line of popes. We don't follow a line of bishops. We don't follow a line of churches. We follow the Bible. You should be able to, with the Bible, set up a church. That's why when you hear me around talking about a covenant and talking about a contract, it's when people consciously and they're conscious of what they're doing, and they have a contract with each other and say, hey, how about if we work together? And you'll switch hands. and we go like that. That's when you got a church. When you do this, and we shake hands on it, and we agree to it, and make a covenant. Now you got yourself a church, a local church. So you don't need anything else. You don't need the authority of somebody before you. What you got is the authority of God's word. You said, well, and this is a big subject. Okay, this when if you want to understand Baptist, this is a very key teaching with what we have. So yeah, no line of Baptist churches.
And besides, God is absolute sovereign. He can start the church anytime within the the line, the
Yes, yeah, and
finite.
oh, and by the way, that's exactly what did happen.
Mhm.
Was you had Baptists as they were rejecting the state baptism. What they were doing is they were starting starting a church themselves. In fact, they had what you would call say baptism. Say is a Latin word for self. So somebody would say, "Well, there's nobody to baptize me because I don't have any Baptist church around here." So he dunked himself underwater and then he baptized other people.
Yeah.
I don't know if I suppose so. As long as they had authority from each other. Miss Maria, yes. Oops. Oh no, that's me. Hang on. Go ahead. No, try it again. I have to turn the dial up here.
Afternoon.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Um, Speaking of churches, I heard about the sabbatical Baptist, and I was wondering how did that,
Sabbatarian.
right?
Okay.
I'm sorry. How did that come about? The
Okay.
separation from the actual
In the
Baptist?
1800s, that became popular because uh, you had the Sabbatarian movement and the Adventist movement. They sort of joined together to where you would have the Seventh Day Baptists, as well as the Seventh Day Adventists. There are some today that say, okay, the Sabbath has got to be on Saturday. Uh, what they did was by trying to engage in more holiness, they wanted to be very careful. So they read in the Bible about the Sabbath, the Jewish Sabbath, and they said, "Oh well, we better keep that." And so they emphasize that seventh day aspect. They'll hold services on a Saturday, and the trouble will be in more modern times of well, which one are you going to follow? And will you have Sunday services or Saturday service? And I say to that, does anybody know the answer I say to that? Begins with a Y. I say yes. Say, which one do we have? Saturdays? Do them both. In fact, I say worship on Monday and then worship on Tuesday and then worship on Wednesday. Okay.
Daily,
Uh,
daily.
daily, yes. Okay. You want to remember that the word Sabbath, or which means to stop from your labors, was not just applied in the Ten Commandments to Saturday only. They had other Sabbaths. So you see new moons, they would have a special feast at that time. You would have the feasts of Israel, those would be Sabbaths also. When they would stop work and do their celebration. So what happened is early in the church, and you'll see this in the New Testament. I'd have to look up the passages specifically, but you'll see in the New Testament how that they were worshiping on the first day of the week. They were breaking bread on the first day of the week. They would, according to Corinthians, they would take a gathering of the offerings for the saints on the first day of the week. And then you go over to the book of the Revelation where it talks about the Lord's Day. Okay, why do they say the Lord's Day now instead of the Sabbath? Because what they started doing was
Resurrection.
they were breaking bread over the resurrection. Okay, so the resurrection was on the first day of the week or the eighth day, you could actually say. And then and so that's where the Sunday worship came in. It really doesn't matter. What's important is that you take the Sabbath day. I would challenge and it's really, you got the Sabbatarians and you got the Seventh Day Adventists, and I'll say, okay, fine, take Saturday off, and honor the Sabbath, and you can still meet on Sunday. However, the Seventh-day Adventists will say, "Mark of the beast, mark of the beast," and they think that's the mark of the beast, that you're kowtowing over to the Catholic Church. No, it was just a change in practice. We're told one man worships, one man esteemeth, thank you, one day above another, another man esteemeth all days alike, and it's all for the Lord. Yeah, if we were in a place where that's what we had to do Saturday, wouldn't matter. Okay, it's when they say it's a sin to do this, that's where you get into the problem. Let me get one more question
So
from
it
her.
had to do also with the calendar because there were changes in calendar. Like
There-
right now, we follow the Gregorian calendar.
It
So
wouldn't matter.
back then, it
Yeah,
wouldn't.
no, because it goes by the week, not by the year.
Yeah. Paul in his letters does not mention or give emphasis to Sabbath.
Right.
He emphasizes on what was you were saying that it's I think in Corinthians, but
Yeah.
that it doesn't matter when you give special days, but the important thing is that you meet as a body
Yeah.
of Christ and in a specific day, and the regular practice then was to meet on the first day, Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the problem is when you make it a matter of separation and doctrine, that's when you start to get into trouble. Yeah. Personally, I take my Sabbath on Tuesday. Okay. That's why you can't reach me on a Tuesday, right? Okay. Just in case if anybody knew about that or not. Okay. You can't reach me on a Tuesday. And why? Because I work on Sundays. I've been working all day. And this goes along with what Christ talked about the priests, how they profane the Sabbath. And it's not what he's saying is not a specific scripture verse. What he's talking about that's when they worked, was on the Sabbath. Okay, so I make sure to take my day off. I sleep nice and late on Tuesday, and if I can, and things like that. Yes, yeah, I give the marching orders on Sunday, then I go take my day off. Yeah. Somebody else? Anything else? Okay, so we will get into Leo the First the next time around. Okay, we'll get into Leo the First. You're going to typically not remember them. What you're going to want to remember, if anything, is what power was grabbed, the differences, the landmarks in the power of the papacy, and you can read a little bit ahead for that. It'll help you out. Okay, this section is actually going to go a little bit faster than the other ones, as a matter of fact.